Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to be doing a special selection today, which is where one of you tell me exactly what you want me to check out, and I do it. If you want to submit your own special selection, just find the link in the description. Today's comes at us from Johnny. It says Presudeos by Alon Mor. That's it, no context. Let's get into this one. This is a very strange album art thumbnail. As I mentioned in today's Wall of Sound video, I do go look at lyrics now to kind of get a little gist for what some of the lyrical themes are going to be, and I can match that with the music and really make stronger analyses by the end of the video. And this is mostly an instrumental with some, well, there's two sentences in it, and they're very, I don't know. I think I'm being taken for a ride here, but let's get into this and see what's going on. Yeah. Some really interesting leading tone colorization that just makes these phenomenal resolutions. Yeah. Interesting that we hit that super high point, brought it down a little bit like we were going to swell it back up, and instead just diminished it all. Yeah, so it's just so far, a minute in, I guess, lots of complex emotions being explored. It's a nice mix between quite a few positive and negative emotions. It's the little minute things here that are just little pieces of ornamentation that I don't think most people would hear.
I can't wait. Worried at night.
What? I don't know what to think about that one. There's definitely a lot of things I can speak positively about it, and I'm going to. But as a whole, as an artistic package, a 9 minute auditory exploration of something, I I don't know what to think about it. This is definitely going to be a song that's going to stick in my head for a while. And it's probably something not today, probably not this week, but sometime I will return to in hopes of better comprehending the larger picture at hand. What I have coming away from this on a first time listen is analogous to an appreciation of the brush strokes of a work of art, of a painting, but not necessarily what those brush strokes create as a whole. Uh, it's like looking at a painting and it's this chaotic mess and just it doesn't evoke any strong emotion from you, but when you look at it, you can see there's a lot of care and attention paid to the materials used, how they're used, the brushstrokes themselves. Um, and there's an appreciation for the creation of it, but you don't quite know how you feel about the piece itself. And that's where I'm at right here with Presudeos, because I don't know what it's doing story wise. And I'm not saying it needs to tell a sort of traditional word story where I need to see a progression of something, but I'm missing the through line between all of these parts. It seems to be a series of interesting ideas that by themselves are still just kind of ideas and don't come together to say anything larger than what it is doing in the moment. And it's possible that that is the purpose of it. But I do have a very strong appreciation for what is going on moment to moment. Even if, again, I'm not too sure I have a strong emotional attachment or response to these individual moments. It's more of an appreciation of the art itself, the art form itself, and the process of which the art was created. So, with that said, let's dive into an extremely all too shallow analysis of this. Because I am stating right off the bat, I do not have a firm grip on this song to do much of a deep dive into what's going on. And I am not ashamed to say that at all. This is a complex, deep song that might not make sense to many people other than the composer himself. Which again is fair. Some people create music for themselves, and I'm all for that. But I definitely, at least speaking to my own personal account, did not get this on a first listen. But like I said, I do appreciate some of the finer things. So let's get into this. And by finer, I don't mean like grander or better, but I mean like minute, fine details. Um, First of all, I think the major takeaway here is production and attention to detail. I mentioned this even early on before we hit the first electronic section, I guess we could call it. There's so many little embellishing ideas, little pieces of ornamentation, whether it is seemingly some sort of throwaway half a bar idea in an instrument, or just a line or rhythmic concept that is ridiculously quiet compared to everything else going on around it, that for most listeners, they're not going to hear that, at least definitely not on a first time. It's not attention grabbing, so it's not something that many people are going to hear, at least on a first time. Maybe second, third, fourth, you start listening for new things. But yeah, these little tiny details thrown in, and it adds so much to the. I don't want to necessarily say the complexity, because for the most part, these ideas do tend to bleed into the background. But it's more about adding character to the track. The addition of them doesn't really add anything musically, but the removal of them would have a very different feel, if that makes any sense. But I think that's the closest or the closest way I can talk about that. It adds character to it. It doesn't add anything really strong musically. It just kind of adds extra identifying elements to the track that kind of give it what I'm going to assume, if this is standard, that Alon Mor touch. Sorry, Alon. Alon? Alon? We're going to go with Alon. That Alon Mor touch. That puts that distinctive signature on the work. And of course, that is expanded on and pushed to 11 after this opening orchestral sequence. But even in the opening moments, it's clear that this is the compositional style of this person is just over the top attention to detail. The tiniest things are still of utmost importance to be included and to be done well. Then we have the stuff on top of that, which is the attention grabbing stuff, which is those gorgeous chord progressions. We were only 2 minutes into the track, I think maybe 1 minute into the track. The orchestral section was slowly winding down. We were getting into that first electronic part that I don't even know how to describe. And I had mentioned that we had already explored so many emotions, both positive and negative. There was victory, there was excitement, there was anticipation, there was anxiety, there was somehow like a reminiscence element to it, a melancholy for ideas past, a longing. All of this captured in 60 seconds worth of chord progressions. Um, it was just fascinating the command that this person has over musical textures and note combination characteristics. The chords and modes that he moved through, the way that he utilized different chordal ideas in different roles. I've mentioned in the past well, actually, I mentioned here as well, leading tones and resolutions. This is a very basic idea as far as chord progression goes. We tend to have chords that we pass through that sort of just connect things. We have chords that direct us to a new place, and then we have chords that are that place that we resolve from the heightened tension, and the leading note leads us into the resolution, or leading chords lead us into the resolving chords. We have all this tension and we resolve the tension, and that leading chord tells us where we should go if we want resolution. And of course, that resolution can be done on several levels. We can have minor resolutions, major resolutions, full resolutions. We can resolve that tension, all of it, some of it, half of it, none of it. And those are going to create different feelings and moods as well. It's not just the chords that are selected, but it's the chords that are grouped together, and also the order of these chords grouped together that create all the different emotions that we talk about when we explore atmospheres and thematic elements of chordal progressions. And there are some really interesting things going on in here. I'd have to listen to it again to really, pick out specific movements. But I think the most interesting part for me, what I'm going to be walking away from with uh, relating to this opening minute or so, is how some of his chords carry dual purpose. So while we might have, for instance, a 4 bar or a 4 chord progression, it's not just 4 chords and then the next 4 chords, which would create the next progression. It's like 4 chords, but the second half, the last 2 chords are also the first 2 chords of the next progression. So they act as both leading and resolution and starting and passing. And they're holding these dual purposes when you look at different groupings of the chords. I'm sure if we took the chords as a whole, just the first minute of chords in that orchestral section, we could probably create some sort of path through that as a whole. And then we can also break it up into sections. Then we can break it up into sections that contain no sections. There is, again, a lot of attention to detail, even just right here. And it's phenomenal how it's created. And I think that I think this is essential, this is integral to creating that idea that I talked about earlier, where I mentioned that this opening section encompassed so many emotions. And it's because he might use a wistful sort of chord progression, or maybe 2 chords together, a leading tone into or a leading chord into a resolution. But that leading chord into the resolution might be the beginning of a 4 chord idea of victory, but maybe the last 2 of that one also connects to the 2 after it to create something that's different. But then also the 4 that are in the middle there compared to the first 4 are creating a different emotion too. And like I said, it's just this command, this mastery over musical properties. It is a breathtaking introduction to this track. That is probably the most long-winded section of the song as far as this analysis is going to go, because it's the part that spoke the most to me, and also the one that I understand the most. It is the part of the song that I think I am most attuned to listening and interpreting. There are a couple sections afterward that return to this more traditional idea of music creation, but I feel like they stand as contrasting elements to some of the more electronic modern sections, um, rather than standing on their own ideas like the opening orchestral section does. But yeah, like I said, that's something, again, this is just a surface analysis. There's probably still a lot more going on there, especially since I mentioned that there's stuff that I heard that was a bit lower down in the mix, or maybe just one-off ideas, short ideas, little concepts. I'm sure there's more of those that I didn't pick up on. Some of those little nuances and details, um, spread throughout that entire section. I'm getting a very surface read on this. Now after this, we had a I don't remember if it was like a fade into this second section or if we immediately went into it, but the best way I could describe it is musical noise. And the musical aspect comes primarily from a rhythmic component. And I kind of want to dive into theoretical elements of what is music and does it require intention, but I believe it is slightly outside the scope here, so I'm going to save that for something. I I don't know what. We'll get there at some point. But the basis is that my baseline definition of music, everybody kind of has their own, but I think the best way to describe music from all sorts of cultures is a combination of sounds and silence. And if I need it, I add the signifier of intentional or not. I don't think music needs intention. Now, that's the part I feel is a little bit out of scope, and I've compressed a lot of this down into this one sentence. But what I feel is important here is that this part of the song is a bunch of sounds. It's a bunch of noise. There's crackles. It sounds like there's fingertip tapping. There's a bottle breaking. There's a wave that's the audio files in reverse, I think. Um, there's just a bunch of noise that happens to come together. Well, not happens. It's very intentional. This is a song after all. It comes together into something that is rhythmically and auditorily musical, at least to me. Personal bias will definitely come in here. I'm sure there's some people who will hear that as pure noise and not musical, but I don't think it's possible to deny the rhythmic element of it. Um, and this is where I begin to move from appreciation of the song into appreciation of the art form, of the production. I'm going to suppose, given that, or I guess assume, given that this is electronic music, that these are all handcrafted sounds. That is something that I feel is a good assumption to make for a lot of artists that utilize electronic music, whether he recorded some of this stuff. Like I said, some of it to me sounds like real things: waves, glass breaking, finger tapping, or if any of it was done with synthesizers, creating sounds from scratch. But there's so much immaculate detail to these sounds, not just in the creation of them, but in the playing back of them. and the way that they are set up within the soundscape and the sound sphere. This section creates a almost palpable sound. It is like I am in a warehouse of these sounds being created, and I could visualize these odd anomalies, a bottle just appearing and falling and smashing rhythmically, waves crashing and then going back. This sweeping in this the okay, so on that glass shattering sound, to me it feels mixed with maybe three other sounds, and it feels like the glass is sweeping into me, into the centered area, and then crashing down and sort of just like buzzing against a ground, a concrete ground or a tile ground or something. And it is just phenomenal. And that's just one sound. There's like a majillion other majillion. I made up a number. That's how bonkers this is. Um, Sounds, ideas, little nuances and embellishments. There's so much going on here, um, that it is impossible for me to pick it all up on a first time or even remember it after 9 minutes. I cannot even begin to think of how many unique sounds themselves were created, much less the combinations they were put in or the way that they were modulated digitally with effects to create specific secondary sounds to what was originally created. It's just, again, like I said at the beginning, what I'm walking away from is an immaculate attention to detail. And the way that all of these sounds come together to create something otherworldly, non musical, noisy, but at its heart, still musical composition that I can feel and hear and think and understand as musical in some properties at least, is it's just beyond me. Um, but then there's also the way that these sounds are utilized like notes to create a sense of, I don't want to say melody. I will not say that some of these sections were melodic, but they had phrasing to them. I think phrasing's a good word. Um, Again, just kind of blows my mind because these are not notes or timbres that are musical at their heart. I would say a lot of it is sound, noise, but the way that he just, oh man, yeah, like I said, I have a huge appreciation for how this was created. And I think it's, once again, this attention to detail. There was one section I specifically remember. I don't know what the sound was. I think it might have been that glass smashing sound. Um, and every time prior, it had smashed, and then there's like the tinkling of the glass on whatever, and then it sort of like faded out naturally. But this other time, I think it only happened once. I don't know why it stood out to me. Probably because it was so different. The glass shattered, and there was like a scooping sound to the audio that cut the fade off early, and then this other sound faded in, and I think it was like a water drop, like a doop, and it just fits so perfectly in this new pocket of silence. It's just, why? This water drop sound never came up again. This repetition had been done 16 times prior. Why did this one need to have this scoop water drop effect? But it's just such a visceral evolution of this collection of sounds. In a lot of ways, I want to um, compare this type of music to highly dissonant uh, music. Stuff like we checked out with that avant-garde, sonoristic, classical stuff, where it's not so much about the notes themselves, it's about how they come together and what they make you feel, which is, I think, an interesting thing for me to say when I've already mentioned the song really didn't make me feel anything. It kind of bounced off of me for the most part. But I can't deny that there is something here that I think some people, at least, are going to latch onto and find absurdly moving. To me, I hear a lot of cacophony, and maybe that'll change on subsequent listens, but I think there is there's a heart here somewhere. I don't know where it is. I haven't found it yet, but I think there is a heart to this song, and I think some people might connect with it. I think a lot of people might connect with it. Um, and the song sort of bounces back and forth between these two concepts of more traditional instrumentation and composition that I found I could latch on to. It was a nice breath of fresh air, and then back to some of this more sonoristic noise techno stuff that I found extremely interesting from a performance or composition creation perspective. I think that's a good word, but didn't really strike me too much musically, emotionally, and it all kind of culminates into somebody sobbing until that is abruptly cut off in what I felt should have been a fade out, and it's a sharp inhale, I think is what it was, and then just silence, a final breath. And I don't think that was the first time we had heard sobbing, but I kind of confused it with laughter, I think, the first time, because it was short. This was definitely sobbing. The first couple of sounds kind of edged on laughter, but as it lengthened out, it definitely turned into crying. And I have no idea how that fits in or why that's an appropriate end to the song. To me, that seems a bit. Mm, okay, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna explain it. I don't want this to be seen negative. It seems a bit pompous to me. It's like a sad song, or a sad song, or a sad movie, or a sad painting, and then there's somebody either in the scene of the film or somebody standing next to the painting saying, "Hey, this is sad. You should be crying." It doesn't let the viewer's emotion be the defining aspect. It is the art is defined to make you sad, or to imply that you should be sad about what you're experiencing. Um, and maybe I've completely read that wrong. I know the album is called Long Awaited Journey, and this was definitely a journey of a song, and it's very possible that thematically, storytelling wise, narrative wise, this person went on this journey, and either it's over and they're saddened that it's over, or they've reached a hurdle that they can't cross, and it's broke them, it's defeated them, or whatever. Who knows? Maybe there's reason within the song or within the album, larger context of why this sobbing is happening, but for my first reaction, I don't think it's earned its right to be there in the way that I see it and the way that I understand it. And again, I said I don't want that to be taken as a negative, and it isn't. It's very possible that I have a bad reading of that section, what it's supposed to mean, or what it does mean according to Alon, or how other people interpret it. And all of those are fine and accurate as well. But for a first time listen, I felt it was just a bit heavy handed, especially since it didn't match up with what I felt going through it, and it feels out of place on a musical level, even outside of me being a listener to the art, being the consumer of the art itself. I don't feel like it adds or relates to anything else going on in the music, which just ties back into my original idea that this is a combination of a lot of interesting ideas that I enjoy on one level or another, but don't see how everything ties together. I'm missing the bigger picture here. And that ending is just, that idea that I'm missing something taken to the nth degree. This is the finale of the song. It's the most emotional. They've included actual crying in the music, which makes me feel that it's an emotionally resonant aspect, or it should have emotional weight to it, and I don't see either of those. So, very interesting song though, regardless. There's a lot of really cool things here for from a musician or a composer's perspective. Like I said, really enjoying the brushstrokes of the art, even if I don't enjoy or get the picture itself. There's a lot of nuance in here that I find absolutely enthralling and very cool to dig into. The song as a whole doesn't work for me, but it's very possible either I'm not in the right headspace for it, I'm not in the right time for it. Maybe it's just context too. Maybe I'll come back to this in 10 years and be like, that was phenomenal. Um, and maybe I'll come back in 10 years and be like, yes, I don't get it. You never know. There's a lot of stuff I come back to and things click or they unclick. You ever listen to something that used to be your jam a few years back and now you're like, why did I even listen to that? Like, it's still kind of good, but it is not played on my CD player for 6 months straight good. Uh, anyways, I'm rambling a bit now. Let's finish this one up. Those are my thoughts on Alon Mor's Presudeos. I feel like I'm pronouncing everything about that wrong. I don't think I got it, one of those 3 words right. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this one or not. Anything that stuck out to you. Anything that you think I missed. Definitely. I feel like I missed a lot of stuff here. Let me know. Johnny, definitely. I'm looking forward to your comment. I want to know what your thoughts and perspective are on this track. When you're done commenting, you'd head up to the description. That was my fault. In there is a link for Linktree. It'll take you to this joint right here. You can email me, check out what I've been listening to, submit a special selection, follow me on Twitter, Patreon, buy some merch. I mean, it's all there. Lots of stuff. When you're done, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. They all help out the channel immensely. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, at 10 p.m. UTC as usual. We'll be moving on with Wall of Sound Week and checking out another special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.